Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so very much for tuning in. We have a lot to talk about. I'm going to try to do more live streams in the day, earlier in the day, and try to do 3 a day on this channel and upload on H.A. Goodman's other channel. But to my super chat, thank you. I can't do this without you. We have a lot to talk about. Hit subscribe right now. Donald Trump beats Joe Biden in 2024 election poll, Newsweek. So this is very interesting. A new poll placed former President Donald Trump as the favorite to win in 2024, edging Democratic incumbent Joe Biden. A national Emerson College poll found that if the two men go head-to-head in 2024, Trump would slightly be favored with 47% against Biden's 46%. So you have to take this, ladies and gentlemen, with a grain of salt. And you have to look at just how interesting these poll numbers are, this revelation is. You're talking about negative media coverage, virtually 100% negative media coverage, okay? So Trump, James, starting it off, James Scully, thank you. Thank you so very much, James. To my UK viewers, thank you. I hope all is well. James, thank you so very, very much. So, James, thank you again. So, he beats Biden in the latest poll, the latest election poll for 2024. James, thank you again. That's with virtually 100% negative media coverage. So he's basically running a 40-yard dash with a 100-pound backpack. You have to take polls. You can't remove media coverage from polls. So Biden is actually doing worse. If there wasn't an entire media apparatus, and James, thank you again to my super chat. I can't do this without you, and I appreciate your support. Thank you, James. You cannot remove media coverage from poll numbers. Biden still loses to Trump, according to the latest poll. You have to look at it from the vantage point of, okay, who does the entire media try to prop up, try to protect at all times? It's not Trump. Okay, Donald Trump, every single day, Donald Trump is like being vilified by most journalists. That influences public opinion greatly. What'll take place, ladies and gentlemen, is that you'll find a poll, and the poll will come out after 2 weeks of a concerted effort. It could be a treatment for something. It could be a viewpoint on something. It could be anything. The media has a distinct, very, a pretty overt and distinct agenda. It's generally what they push is what the Democratic Party feels is just or right or good for their chances politically. So nobody was saying, hey, the Steele dossier was completely unverified. Why are we looking at it? It was, oh my God, the Steele dossier. Fact check. The Steele dossier, some things have been proven. The whole thing was fabricated. Nothing major was proven aside from like cities existing and or like, air or, nothing in the Steele dossier was proven. The Steele dossier was full of nonsense and gossip, like stating that people associated with Trump were meeting with Russian agents. Nothing that never happened. When they couldn't find anything to corroborate the Steele dossier, they then tried to get people to see if Michael Cohen had visited Prague. Roger Rabbit! Purge the politicians and replace them with law-abiding citizens, the only way forward. Roger Rabbit, thank you. Hope all is well. Roger Rabbit, thank you. I hope all is well, Roger Rabbit. James, I hope all is well. Thank you again, as always, to my UK viewers. Roger Rabbit, thank you. Thank you as always, Roger Rabbit. Greatly, greatly appreciated. I can't do this without you, ladies and gentlemen. So you got to ask yourself, what's Biden's real poll numbers and what are Trump's real poll numbers? If we had an objective media, if we had journalists that were objective, if we had people like Sam Donaldson or Tom Brokaw or David Brinkley or Ted Koppel on the news instead of the dystopian nightmare we have now. If you had people saying, oh, okay, it doesn't matter who wins, who loses. You have people who grew up. See, this is the thing. Journalists in Walter Cronkite's era or, Ted Koppel's era or Sam Donaldson or Peter Jennings or David Brinkley's era, they were first and foremost interested in the truth. If the truth hurt the Democratic Party, if the truth hurt the Republican Party, they didn't care. Now you have social media algorithms actively suppressing the New York Post. Actively suppressing the New York Post. Okay? Like suspending their account on Twitter. Suspending their account on Twitter. And you have to ask yourself, what would be the poll numbers if people could actually talk about issues pertaining to the corruption of Biden and his son? We weren't able as a society to really dive into that because there's a media blackout on a lot of things. They did it to Bernie Sanders. Anyone too far left or anyone they deem as an obstacle to the mainstream candidate or thought process or paradigm, they then just marginalize or vilify. Trump was vilified. And that's all. I mean, his words were taken out of context. They inject words into his mouth, things he never said. They do the opposite with Biden. With Biden, they actually go to the extent of muting his microphone. They go to the extent of muting his microphone. And it's like you can't go ahead and look at politics without looking at the profound impact media has. If you remove, people who don't like Trump, if they just don't like his personality, that's fine. If they think that, I can respect you if you say, I don't like Trump's personality or his policies. And if you leave it at that, fine. Totally rational statement. If you say he's a despot and authoritarian, then you're completely brainwashed and you know nothing about history and you are conflating the media hysteria around Trump with who he actually is. So you see this all the time with every topic. You see journalists, you see it with Afghanistan. For about 2 or 3 or 4 days, they were actually reporting on the catastrophe that was unfolding. They actually were reporting on that. And that's when Biden's poll numbers tanked. Because everybody knew that after this last catastrophe, disaster in terms of foreign policy, where 13 Americans lost their lives. 13 Americans lost their lives because Biden did not abide by the Doha Agreement. He did not abide by an agreement that said we needed to be out by May 1st. And so, had he simply abided by that agreement, none of this would have happened. Because he would have had January, February, March, April, and May. He would have had time to leave in a logical and rational manner. Okay? Simply saying, the rushed evacuation of 120,000 people. Okay? We still left people behind, number one. Then they lied through their teeth saying, well, we contacted them 19 times. That is a lie by omission. You can contact somebody 100 times in that war zone. It's a dystopian nightmare. And they utilized the T-band. We'll call them the T-band for the algorithm. They utilized the T-band as security outside of the airport. They gave people, they gave them the names of American citizens and Afghans. What do you think the names on those lists, where do you think they'll end up? You think they're just not going to keep, you think those names aren't going to end up in, God forbid, ISK or AQ's hands? Why would you give lists of Americans to the T-band? Does that make any sense at all? Does that make any sense at all? Why would you do any of this stuff? Why would you give lists? So, why on earth would you give lists to your adversary? And then you have 13 Americans and 169 or close to 200 Afghans who lose their life because you were petulant, because you wanted to spite Trump. This is a government run by malice. This is a government run by this petulant type of behavior. Petulance. Go look it up. It's a fantastic word that describes a great many Democrats. The quality of being childishly sulky or bad-tempered. But it's more than that. It's more than that. They want to do the opposite of Trump at all times. This is why their poll numbers are tanking. And polls, by the way, this is the thing. If Biden is below Trump, now, the polls are propping him up. The media is propping him up. So if media was, you have to always ask yourself, if media was objective, what would the poll numbers be? If media was objective, what would the true numbers be? If media was objective and didn't take a side, what would the true numbers be? What would Trump's numbers be? What would Biden's numbers be? And you look at the polls. If media didn't do everything possible to prop up one side, and that's the question. If they didn't do everything possible to prop up, to elevate, to protect one political side, where would we be as a country? I find it very bizarre that people don't understand the level of groupthink there is. And the fact that the Democratic mentality is, well, if everyone thinks something, it must be right. But there are endless examples, even in recent history, of everyone believing something and it being wrong. You know, WMD is one example. So you get this, well, you know more than all the experts? Yeah. You could have said the same thing at any point in American history. You know more than all the experts who say the Gulf of Tonkin, should bring us into Vietnam. You know more than the experts who say WMD. You know more than the experts, and pick any topic, who say that the .com craze will keep going. You could pick any topic. You could pick any topic, and you would have been the 10th dentist. Their whole thing is don't be the 10th dentist. I'm telling you, become the 10th dentist. It's much better. Especially in this world where there's this really concerted effort to push one viewpoint, and that's it. Larry, thank you so very much. Happy Labor Day. Thank you, Larry. Thank you so very, very much. You're looking at a country where image and public relations, they mean everything. That's why look at Biden. Once Biden faces impeachment, which he will, and hopefully they impeach him numerous times, which they should. once Biden faces impeachment, you're looking at a situation where I don't know how he's going to continue. His presidency is pretty much done in terms of him being viewed as competent. He'll never again, like, the entire planet says right now, if you look at what's going on, and it's still like we live in a world where everyone knows that Biden is completely inept. It's not that there's nothing he can do right now. Everyone knows that the debacle in Afghanistan was his fault. Okay? He was president. Even if you try to blame Trump, you can't. Okay? He was president. He owns it. There are Americans left behind. And you can't look at this and say that this man, Biden, is competent or worthy of leading the greatest country in the world. Is he worthy? Is he a capable leader? Is he a capable leader? Does he even possess any leadership skills? I mean, we can go and look at things from all different perspectives. Trump possessed leadership skills so much so there had to be a resistance. There doesn't have to be a resistance to Biden because nobody knows what he stands for. So, it's like if you don't know what a person stands for, okay, you have no clue what they stand for. You have no clue what they care about. Like, does anyone know what Biden stands for? Does anyone know what Biden stands for? I don't know. I don't know. Like, can you tell me? Can anyone here tell me? I know what does Biden stand for? What does Biden stand for? What does he believe in? What does he believe in foreign policy? We know that President Trump reversed U.S. foreign policy. We know that President Trump reversed 20 years of failed foreign policy. Is Trump perfect? No. But it's like we know at least what he stands for. Biden is just basically not Trump. The way they govern is public relations. Well, we're not Trump, so we're good. Or, you know what, we're accepted. Or we're the intelligentsia, so we're accepted. And it's like you look at if something is wrong, it's wrong even if everyone is saying like it's right. So just because people look at Biden and they say, well, at least he's not Trump, that doesn't mean he's a good leader. That doesn't mean he's a good leader. That doesn't mean that he is somebody that that doesn't mean that he's somebody that should be in the Oval Office right now. So, looking at this here, you gotta always, whenever you hear anything to do with like poll numbers or public relations or perception or Trump's chances or Biden's chances, go look at how the media, just go look at how the media reacts to Biden, or how they try to protect Biden. Mashed Potato Brains says the most absurd things. Okay, he whispers in a soft whisper. He's always like, it's just always bizarre. Like, he's slurring his speech and going off in these bizarre tangents, and it's almost like a demon's trying to come out of him. Okay? I mean, we did that whole thing last night. It was kind of hilarious. And so, it's like, you're looking at a pretty obvious effort to protect one political side and vilify and demonize another political side. So it's like you have to take things and say, okay, well, what are Trump's actual poll numbers? What's his support throughout the country? What is actually his support throughout the country? What is his support throughout the country? And you have to like, you have to look and say, okay, it's probably more. But see, again, even if his support is greater, there's an expression: if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But if it's broke, you got to fix it. There are things that President Trump has to do. There are things that he should do to address what happened. Thank you, Quantum Football. Thank you very much. Shana Tova to you. Thank you, Quantum Football. There are things that he needs to do. Like, so for example, he does need to tone down a little bit of his rhetoric. He does need to tone it down. And it's like, it would help him. It would help him if he just was more diplomatic. I think it would. I think it would help him. I mean, you have to start speaking to people who might not. President Trump has to do a better job of speaking to people who might not actually want to vote for him initially. So, I mean, you know, you have to go ahead and speak to people who might not vote for him. You have to do that. You can't just You can't just speak to the choir, because if you speak to the choir, ain't gonna work. It ain't gonna work. You have to broaden the message. You have to broaden the message. If you don't broaden the message, and he has to do that, or else he can go in with higher poll numbers. You can go in with higher poll numbers, and still, it won't. Then there's the issue of Republicans. Then there's the issue of Republicans doing what they have to do. So then there's the issue of Republicans with legislation that's taking place right now. I mean, if we have a normal, let's put it this way, if we have a normal November, and we don't have social media companies suppressing stories, it's a whole new ballgame. But again, I mean, I think that Trump, I've said this before, he has to go ahead and he has to speak to, he has to go on CNN. He has to go on CNN. He has to broaden his appeal. And that's the thing. If he just takes a sledgehammer, and continually like pounds or like, focuses on the points that resonate only with his voters, that might not be the best thing to do. He should probably try to reach out and, like I said, get interviewed by CNN, get interviewed by MSNBC. He has to show people that he's human. He really does. And I mean, there is a charming side to Trump. It's really hilarious. He's actually pretty hilarious. There's a charming side to Trump. There is a charming side to Trump. He has to show that charming side. He has to show that he's an actual human being. If he shows he's a human being and he's able to withstand, like, this is the thing, you can't always be defensive. You can't always be defensive. You can't always be like combative. He has to go ahead and show to the people who despise him the most. And I know that, like, it's counterintuitive. And people think that, like, that shouldn't be the case. But he has to go ahead and show that he's a human being with faults, and that he's willing to not just take criticism, but he's willing to back up his ideology or viewpoint or policies or his record, even in front of the most rabid anti-Trump CNN journalists. Like, that's what he should do. What President Trump should really do is go to like CNN, MSNBC, like numerous times, and they're going to try to vilify him. But if he's calm, if he's cool, if he's collected, he did that in 2016 and 2015. They interviewed him and they tried to like disparage him. It didn't work. It actually helped that he went to CNN and MSNBC. It actually helped that he was interviewed by journalists who didn't like him. MAGA 2020, thank you. Good spirits, thank you. MAGA 2020, thank you very, very much. I hope all is well. Thank you so very much as always. Thank you. MAGA 2020, thank you. My super chat, thank you. I can't do this without you. But I just think that, like, if you can, I don't think Trump can win if he just stays on Fox News or Newsmax. I don't think that he can have rallies. He can have a million viewed interviews on Fox News. He can go ahead and do the same things over again. It's not going to work. He needs to switch things up. So you have to switch things up. You have to go ahead. You got to switch things up. You've got to, you've got to go ahead and you've got to say, okay, what worked in 2015 and 2016? What worked in 2015 and 2016? Okay? And like you have to go ahead and do what worked in 2015 and 2016. MAGA, thank you. MAGA 2020, thank you. In 2015 and 2016, he was able to show the world or show the country who he was, despite the media onslaught. See, the good thing about Trump is that he can circumvent all the negative emotions and speak to half the country. So 74 million Americans voted for him after 24/7 negative media coverage. Why did that take place? You think if there was 24/7 negative media coverage of Biden, even one person would vote for him? There's only positive virtually even after the Afghanistan disaster. There's still basically positive coverage, or it's the type of coverage that doesn't blame him directly. You'll see some CNN articles here and there blaming Biden or like putting him in a negative light, but it was such a catastrophe even they couldn't like circumvent the reality of what took place. You have a situation where President Trump is actually able to do pretty well considering the overwhelming, negative media coverage. If he just branched out a little bit, if he just, he needs to go on Joe Rogan. He needs to go on Brandon Tatum. He needs to go on Ben Shapiro. He must do these things. And I think that the sooner he does these things, the better, because the world is going, media is going to realize that they need to silence or suppress or harm his chances in one way or another. So he should start doing these things earlier. He should have, he should have said, hey, MSNBC, go ahead and interview me. Well, I don't know. Maybe not now. He needs to actually, I don't know what, but, be coached or, he has to kind of get used to being with petulant, malicious journalists who only want to tear him apart. I don't think he was ever used to that. He was. The interesting thing is he was in 2015, so I don't know. I don't understand why he can't. I don't understand why he can't That's right, Eric. You're right. His advisors won't let him. But the thing is, ladies and gentlemen, it's true that like the people who watch MSNBC and CNN are not going to vote for Trump. But there is a segment, generally, but there's a segment of the viewers that are on the fence. Okay, you see CNN on like airports and stuff. So, I mean, or like gyms. So it's like there are always going to be a certain percentage of people, even who watch CNN, who are open to voting for Trump. That's my point. He has to think in terms of strategy. Of the Republican voters polled, 67% say would vote for Trump in a hypothetical GOP primary. See, I think that it would be far more than 67%. DeSantis is the only one to reach double digits at 10%. Then you had Pence, Cruz, and Nikki Haley. I think Nikki Haley would be a good vice president. But again, people say, oh my God, no, you need to like, the reason he picked Pence was to get certain conservatives who wouldn't ordinarily like Trump in a primary. So Trump should focus on, okay, if a woman, okay, but I think they should pick DeSantis. If it's Trump, DeSantis, I don't think they can go wrong. Because DeSantis is doing very well in Florida. He's done very well in Florida. If you look at, like, what they'll do is they'll say, look at the past 2 weeks, the past 3 weeks. In aggregate, he's done very well. Blue states dominate fatality rate in aggregate numbers. That's why they always slice and dice things. They dominate in terms of unemployment. They have the highest unemployment rates. They have the highest fatality rates. Homelessness, crime, you look exponentially worse in Democratic-run states. It's gotten exponentially worse. And now there's an eviction crisis. Okay, the states that did not impose draconian policies are not going to have the type of eviction crisis as blue states. And I side with, obviously, tenants. I don't want people kicked out of their homes because of Democratic policies that wouldn't allow them to work. But the longer that you prolong, a certain number of people from, or corporations or business owners or people who own buildings, the tougher you make it for them, the worse it is for the economy overall. You're not doing any favors in terms of the overall economy. And Democrats are focused on like everything other than promoting economic growth. That's like if you use words like climate change and infrastructure, and they haven't explained, even with the infrastructure bill, how building or fixing bridges or roads is going to lead to economic growth throughout the country. In fact, the Wharton School of Business stated that it would decrease economic growth over 10 or 20 years. About 20 years, it would decrease economic growth. So I don't get it. It's kind of like it's completely counterproductive. Like everything they're doing is counterproductive, counterintuitive. But in their mind, they have all of media. In 2022, it's going to be different because you don't have a Republican Party that truly opposes Democrats. In 2022, you'll have a Trump Republican Party. In 2022, you'll have a Trump Republican Party. It'll be completely different because they'll actually oppose they'll actually oppose the narrative. It could be a narrative on a public crisis. It could be a narrative on foreign policy. It could be what takes place is you have these. They even did it with Biden and his like whispered hushed tone. So they'll be like, "Why Biden's whisper speaks volumes according to experts," and it's like you can just. What they do is they say experts A consensus among experts agrees with Democrats. That's the game. It's like this vapid semantic game where it's all about peer pressure. Who cares if they found experts that agreed with them on anything? Because there are experts that disagree. The problem is media will immediately pounce on them, try to disparage them, and dissuade anyone from actually voicing an opinion contrary to the mainstream. So you don't really have, it's like a fabricated consensus. People are afraid to talk about any issue, from health issues to a whole bunch of other issues. You don't have a true, Democrats never had a true consensus on anything. Okay? People are discouraged from actually debate and discussion. And so you gotta ask yourself, like, in any other world, would mashed potato brains be leading the greatest country in the world? In any other world, would mashed potato brains be leading the United States of America? No. What made Trump, like, for the longest time, he was able to either manipulate or utilize media to his advantage. He wasn't able to the past 4 years, really the past year and a half. Okay, there was too much negativity created within social media. There was just way too much negativity created within social media. And so what he needs to do now is regroup, just do something different, whether it's go on, Joe Rogan, Ben Shapiro, or MSNBC, CNN. There has to be something different. If he does the same thing over again, it might not work, even with a Republican House. If you look, ladies and gentlemen, a Republican House will help him greatly. A Republican House will help him greatly. That still might not be enough. It still might not be enough. It still might not be enough. The Republican House is going to help him. Okay? It's going to be a different ballgame because you're going to have investigations of Biden. But you're going to need to circumvent this level of emotion. I've never seen the level of disdain. I've never seen the level of disdain that people have, like, fabricated just because they don't like Trump. Like, it's at Clintonian levels. So you gotta do something to kind of combat that. That's the thing. That's what worries me. That's why I'm spending close to an hour talking about it. He's already up in terms of poll numbers. He has to kind of build on that. So, I mean, like, look, I don't think, that's why I keep saying, like, the trajectory of your life should be different from the trajectory of the country. I don't think like you should focus on love, happiness, success, health, joy. Tell somebody you love them. Tell somebody that you disagree with that you love them. Even a Biden voter, go and tell that person you love them and hang up the phone so you don't have to hear. But it's like the country itself. The country itself is not doing well. What we're experiencing is something that I haven't seen before. Usually there's two political sides going up against one another. And they're opposing one another. We don't have that now. We have pretty much one paradigm of political thought, and you have Trump Republicans who have yet to take over completely. They've taken over the Republican Party in terms of voters, which is a very interesting dynamic. Trump Republicans have taken over the GOP in terms of voters. They haven't taken over the Republicans in terms of politicians. You still have politicians who would investigate Trump tomorrow. Cheney, Kinzinger, Mitt Romney, Richard Burr. You can't have that. That's one of the reasons that the country is descending into madness. Like we're going to have economic problems that we should have already been out. We should never have tanked our economy. Okay? We should never have tanked our economy. We should never have prevented people from working. We did that, and now we face a tremendous eviction crisis. We face an economy that's not growing as fast as anticipated. We face high inflation, highest inflation rate in like 13 years. Crime, there's an exponential increase in crime. Homelessness is increasing, which might be worse after the eviction moratorium ends. They're focused on an infrastructure bill because they want to make Biden into FDR, which will never in a million years happen. They can't even make this man into a functioning human being. Like mashed potato brains, they're muting his microphone. So, But it's like the question is how bad are things going to get? I think that, and when I ask this question, it's like how bad can we get? How bad can we get? How bad can we get? So, in the comment section, how bad do you think things can get? Because in terms of the economy, we're not going to rebound in the manner that we should. Hopefully, we'll rebound, but I mean, when you have a focus on everything else other than economic growth, when your focus is climate change and not economic growth, even if your heart is in the right place, you're looking for. It's kind of a devastating scenario considering what we've been through as a country the past year economically. And it's like, if things get worse, then Biden's poll numbers will continue to tank. All Trump has to do, you see, you have to understand, like, there are people who would deal with a complete nightmare, dystopian nightmare, just as long as Trump wasn't president. That is frightening. So that is frightening. You've got to understand that. There are people who, like, you're dealing with people who have such animosity towards this man. And that's, I guess, my long-winded, boring, hour-long diatribe on this. He has to kind of reach out. He has to reach out and speak to people. He has to reach out to people who wouldn't vote for him. If he doesn't reach out to people who are on the fence, and I don't care how, if it's picking Nikki Haley, or if it's going on CNN, if it's toning down his rhetoric, I don't know what to do. I don't know what he needs to do, but he needs to kind of switch things up and speak to those people, because if he doesn't speak to those people, it's going to be the same thing over again. It'll be the same thing over again. You can't go ahead and You can't go ahead and expect Trump to win again if he doesn't switch things up. If he doesn't switch things up, he has to go ahead He has to go ahead and switch things up. If he doesn't switch things up, then it's a problem. But ladies and gentlemen, I'm gonna start doing these early live streams. I will be back at around 5:30, people. So be here at 5:30 today. So the link will be below. I'll take a 2-hour little break. I'll be back at 5:30. Be here 5:30 today, ladies and gentlemen. On the dot, I promise, well, I'll try my best not to be late. And I'll try to be a little bit more energized than I was during this segment, because I was a broken record this segment, but it's just important. He has to do something differently. I don't think people realize that, and it's you can't preach to the choir. If you preach to the choir all the time, it ain't gonna work. 5:30 p.m. Pacific, 2 hours from now, ladies and gentlemen. God bless. Have a great day. Thank